so much more fun than the morning of your day started. So I would say do your thing. And
Okay.
Michael, do you want us to get involved in answering questions during your talk, or would you prefer to do it after?
This may not be a talk that provokes questions. Actually,
Mhm.
this is
Even
simply a
better.
story. So I'm not. I mean, of course, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I imagine there will be none.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Liz. You're the best.
Thank you.
I love it. Yeah.
Okay, so how are we supposed to measure leadership? What signals will leadership emit? Different types of leadership impact things like turnover rate, employee happiness and loyalty, price to earnings ratios, stock prices, and revenue growth. Let's consider 2 examples of the impact of different leadership styles. The first one is Costco. Costco's annual employee turnover is 13% overall and falls to 6 or 7% range for those on the job for more than a year. It's a gigantic retailer here in the US. They cover 90% of healthcare costs, which again is a big deal here in America, and pay hourly workers an average of $25 per hour. Their CEO, Craig Jelinek, recently told a committee who are considering raising the US minimum wage to $15 per hour. This isn't altruism, it's competitive advantage. Their strategy goes beyond benefits and pay. Since the early 2000s, Costco have been promoting cultures of respect, internal mobility, and caring for people. And these drive workplace engagement. From the bottom up, Costco is built on a culture that values passion, pride, integrity, and just treating your employees right. It's a culture that its co-founders spent decades carefully crafting. And this payoff is huge. If you look at the PE ratio of Costco, you will observe they have a far higher valuation in comparison to the rest of the S&P index. Meanwhile, at another well-known retailer operating the same kind of systems, supply chains, and warehouses, their story is quite different. This company famously focused on automation and data-driven productivity, even considered high staff churn desirable at times. Their warehouse workforce was alleged to be considered as necessary but replaceable. And according to a New York Times report, management there feared that workers with more tenure would turn complacent or even worse, disgruntled. According to a June 17th article published on Recode referencing a leaked memo, this company faced warehouse worker turnover of 123% in 2020, which grew to 159% in 2021. This company are forecasting that in some US states, they will have exhausted the available labor pool for certain positions by the end of 2023. For those of you who wonder, okay, what does average attrition and worker turnover look like for warehouse and transportation positions in the US? For the period March to August 2020, it's 33%. It's really easy to see how we got here. Have we been too obsessed about data-driven decisions, KPIs, productivity hacks, efficiencies? Has leadership been reduced to the ultimate optimization of systems? Some might say that humans have become capital or resources in this system. Think about this term capital for a minute. In one breath, a company talks about culture, and in another, we humans are deemed dispensable derivatives. In this turning point in time, with COVID-19 and work from home, the improbable catalysts, we really need to redefine leadership. Great modern leadership is simply being human. As for me, I don't check any of your boxes. There are plenty of adjectives that we might use to describe people who lead, And those adjectives have changed immensely in the last few years. Let's think for a second about some of the words that we associate with great leaders. Consistency, tolerance, protection, adaptability. I wasn't any of these things. I was a disruptive influence at school to the extent I was excluded from the education system at age 15. There wasn't really even much of a disciplinary process. The school leaders agreed that there was no fixing the situation and just booted me out. Obviously, it was an absolute nightmare for my mum. I discovered my work ethic in a warehouse 5 years later, working for a junk mail company. So ironic that I now work in advertising. And that boost of confidence and self-awareness led me to later setting up an international recruiting firm in 2001. That gave me the encouragement to be someone better, but I still wasn't a leader. I don't ever get to decide if I'm a leader. None of us do. Our followers make that decision. Or a leader who recognizes one of their own. In our roles, we have a unique privilege of being able to see leadership really close up and notice when it's missing. We happy few. We literally hunt leaders hoping to find the best ones. Like many of you here, I've hired a lot of leaders. When you're trusted to operate the recruiting machinery in a large multinational organization, you get to see a lot of leaders rise and a lot fall. I've lived and worked in the UK, China, Singapore, and the United States, and how great leadership is defined in these places is really radically different. In a recruiting career spanning 25 years, I've personally hired hundreds, if not thousands of leaders. And I work currently as the head of talent acquisition, innovation, and operations at WPP. For those of you that don't know us, we're a creative transformation company who employ 109,000 people in more than 80 countries. And we use the power of creativity to build better futures for our people, planet, clients, and communities. We believe the new normal is yet to be defined. Creativity has the power to ensure that what comes next is better than what came before. And more than ever, the definition of leadership and the qualities that matter have changed radically. And at a time when hiring has become a universal challenge, the success of a business is to a great extent predicated on the ability of the leaders to attract followers and to keep them loyal, as well as to attract other leaders, of course. So I now want to spotlight 3 people who introduced me to the right leadership qualities and who helped me go from being a disruptive, negative influence to eventually recognizing these qualities in others. The first person I'd like to talk about is Angela. Being hired in 2011 as the head of talent acquisition at Group M in Asia Pacific meant for me that I had to abandon my entrepreneurial dream. The company that I'd been building for a decade had to be divested and sold in order for me to take on my first corporate TA leadership role. I used to say it was my first real job. As you can imagine, I was incredibly nervous and I knew that the company was taking a bet on me. I worked directly for Angela Ryan for 5 years. She was the Global Chief Talent Officer at Group M, a role where she led a team of hundreds of HR followers, a population of more than 20,000 people. Angela is a remarkable woman. During my 5 years working for her, she started a doctorate in neuroscience and adopted 2 children from different countries. And despite being this busy, she still made time to celebrate all the big life moments for everyone in her team. But these are not the most memorable things for me about her way of building followership and loyalty, though. Angela was a formidable character to work for, intimidating to some people. She's an incredible human leader who's successful, powerful, originally qualified as a lawyer. How effective is anyone here at deceiving legal professionals? It was impossible to misdirect Angela when she fixed her steely blue eyes on you. You would not dare to do anything except for be 100% truthful, even when you were admitting to setbacks and even defeat. How did she lead with humanity? She built followership and loyalty in me by being 100% consistent in delivering objective feedback. When working for her, I never needed to wonder, how am I actually doing? Because Angela's system of feedback was conversational and continuous and only adjacent to our formal performance management system, I had certainty. At work, I knew what was up. Meanwhile, according to Work Human, less than 20% of workers get regular feedback on how they are doing. How is this okay? What was remarkable and different about Angela is that she would never ever miss or cancel a one-on-one. And this wasn't just with me, this was everyone. She would move or cancel other events and commitments to ensure we had time. We all knew it was a priority for her. It was like the tick of a metronome. And these were not those pointless status meetings that we've all sat in. We knew we were important to her, and we knew she would deliver direct, objective feedback. Yeah, of course, I could still be bitten by a dog or a snake, fall off of a bike, or be unlucky in love. Life is glorious and disorderly. But at work, I knew what was up, and I knew what I was doing. Now, you might say that it's easier said than done. We all have so much going on. As recruiting leaders, you have to deal with bosses, clients, candidates, and other stakeholders. We're all overwhelmed by things like the battle of the inbox, managing escalations, systems, and expectations. It's easy to say, I don't have the time to give feedback to all my reports, or they should know what they're doing. So what I've learned over the years is giving feedback consistently, continually, and objectively. That's what separates a good leader from a great leader. And if you care about building a more human workplace like Angela did, start by prioritizing feedback for your team so they know where they stand with you and the company. And they never have to admit, I honestly don't know what I'm doing. The next person I want to talk about is Ashutosh Srivastava. Try saying that after a few beers. Ashu builds followership through his trust in and patience with others. I worked for Ashutosh when he was the CEO of the APMEA region at one of WPP's largest agencies. We jokingly used to call APMEA half the world because it's Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa. Despite the scale, visibility, and pressures of this position, Ashutosh didn't fit the picture in my head at the time of what a CEO talks and acts like. He wasn't outspoken or loud. He didn't work a room. He never seemed like he was selling or persuading. He didn't appear to be perpetually busy or stressed, fielding distractions. He never complained about any demands on his time. When you were with him, he was laser focused on the conversation and on you. Ashu would listen more than he would talk. He would defer to his team on points of view on critical issues. People are drawn to work with Ashutosh. He's magnetic when it comes to attracting talent and known for supporting people, promoting them into stretch roles. You might wonder why he's been so successful. The key to Ashu's success is to hire for potential and have the patience for them to grow. Ashu is tolerant of mistakes, even mishaps, understanding that people need to have the confidence to fail in order to bring their own magic or greatness. To sum it up, Ashu is a living embodiment of patience and tolerance. I think there's something we can all learn from Ashu. We witness so many executives who are running around all the time, hair on fire, asking, how can we get it done faster? And many of them aggressively manage risk. Ashu puts his own reputation on the line by backing people who may not be high performers yet, but showed high potential. And if they may fail, he continues to back them, knowing that the reason he believed in them to begin with had not changed. Does your team feel absolutely sure that you trust them? Does your team really believe that their mistakes will not be held against them. Some of us here might admit to being too focused on outcomes and process. Are we building binary systems of measuring performance without context? Or are you lucky enough to work at a place where people deliberately cultivate an environment of trust and tolerance? Think for a minute about the actions you can take right now, today, to help build patience and tolerance into your systems and processes, especially those relating to performance management. Showing this kind of patience and tolerance and demonstrating your sustained belief in other people is truly cultivating talent. Now I want to talk to you about Diana. Diana creates human moments at work by facilitating community, just like Phil. Diana's team trusts her because she took on risk to protect them. Diana was my direct report and the head of talent acquisition in North America at Group M. Her team delivered 3,000 knowledge worker hires in 2021 with skills in digital, analytics, and data. Diana is the sole breadwinner in her household and mother to Gianna Blanconi, who is 6, very loud, and obsessed with armpits. When the pandemic hit, many of the advertisers that we worked with were cancelling or pausing investments or budgets. It makes sense that spending on outdoor media in Times Square, for example, wouldn't get the same return on investment with everyone cooped up indoors. WPP took serious measures to prevent job loss, including temporarily pausing the share dividend. 3,000 of our executives took voluntary salary reductions and other cost-cutting measures. It was a time of high anxiety for us and many other companies, and every recruiter at the time, including, I'm sure, everyone here today, was concerned about hiring reductions. Key competitors were already laying off recruiting teams in anticipation of a slowdown. Facing this challenging commercial reality and pause on hiring, what happened to the recruiting team when there was no end in sight? Short term, we needed to save money, but longer term, we couldn't afford to say goodbye to this team. Their networks and relationships were too valuable, and Diana saw that. Sure, we could furlough them and hire them back, but the trust would have been broken, truly. To save the team, Diana had to think differently about the capabilities that recruiters have. Diana encouraged the business to look beyond experience-based requirements and found new homes for our recruiters, saving them from furlough or job loss. She successfully redeployed these team members who were at risk into jobs in account management, SEO, finance, ops, DEI, paid social. When hiring eventually returned, so did many of our recruiters. They were eager to return to TA work. But some stayed put in their roles in DEI, ER, and operations. In all, during the most uncertain point in that crisis, Diana worked to redeploy 19 people. None of these recruiter jobs would have been saved had she not cared enough to protect them. This was a major heavy lift on her part. So what can we learn from Diana's determination to protect others? Great leaders would never sacrifice people to save the numbers. Would you really give your best to a company who sacrifice people in service of the numbers? Judge a leader and the quality of their performance by how they treat the crew in rough waters. We don't throw the crew overboard in choppy seas. People will rescue you in hard times. Numbers won't. So with COVID-19, as well as recruiting leaders, we were all facing the same challenge. No hiring, unless you're hiring nurses or contact tracers. And even our own jobs were in jeopardy. Diana was able to protect 19. Sometimes you won't be able to save everybody, but a great leader will do everything they can to protect as many people as they can. And for those of you in America, you'll be able to relate to this in a very special way. For those of you outside America, check this out. 39 of our United States operate what we call at-will employment, which means no matter how loyal you've been, no matter what you've achieved for the company, today could be your last day at work. Is it any wonder we crave protection when most Americans are only a couple of paychecks away from financial insecurity and have no substantial safety net. I want to talk to you about one more leader. This is a special story that I very much doubt you've heard before. There is one leader who did everything he could to protect people in the face of a giant adversary. I'm going to say this adversary is arguably even more powerful than COVID-19. Yu-Ming Hong is the founder of a Chinese education company, which 3 years ago had 88,000 employees and 26 million students. Around 70% of Chinese students studying the US and Canada have taken English classes from the firm. Its stock still trades today on the New York Stock Exchange with the symbol EDU. And a year ago, the company was valued at $30 billion. But who is this Yu-Ming Hong? We should probably start there. He was born into rural poverty and twice failed the entrance exam to Beijing University. When he was finally accepted, he was placed in a class for substandard students because he could not speak standard Mandarin Chinese. Ming Hong was a poor student, both financially and academically. In his junior year, pneumonia forced him to take a year off. After graduating in 1985, many of his classmates fulfilled their dream and went abroad for further education. Ming Hong, meanwhile, began to apply to US universities whilst teaching English at Beijing. And after 3 years, he was accepted by a university. However, his requests for overseas study visas were repeatedly denied. He never made it. He founded New Oriental English in 1993. In 2010, it was the largest private educational enterprise in China. And as of November 2015, New Oriental had a network of 63 schools, 720 learning centers, 25 New Oriental bookstores, over 5,000 third-party bookstores, and over 17,000 teachers in 53 cities, as well as an online network with approximately 12 million registered users. Again, listed on the New York Stock Exchange in 2006, and this was a good investment. The stock went up from 60 cents a share to almost $162 per share in the 15 years that followed. And entrepreneurs have big dreams. I know I did. But let me tell you about Yu-Ming Hong's dream in his own words. My biggest dream is to found a private university and for it to be one of China's top educational institutions after 40 or 50 years of development. Just think about the humility in that statement in the current world where, there are tech companies that seek market dominance in a 5-year term. They seek to achieve monopolies through venture funding. Yu-Ming continued, when applying for higher education, my dream is for the best high school graduates to take my university into consideration, along with the likes of Tsinghua and Beijing University. Now, Ming Hong is a member of the Central Committee of the China Democratic League, which is one of the 8 legally recognized minor political parties in the People's Republic of China, under the Chinese Communist Party's United Front. And his philosophy might sound very dramatic to you. Hewing a stone of hope out of a mountain of despair. Hew a stone of hope out of a mountain of despair, and you can make your life a splendid one. In the beginning, he added, there were no roads in the world. Only as people began traveling did roads come into being. Successful roads are formed not only when people roam aimlessly, but when they're headed in the same direction. The same is true for New Oriental. It was formed as people gathered to study, and like a successful road, it did not achieve its success by chance. People who shared dreams and aspirations worked together to forge an exciting trail. He added, the road ahead will be even longer and more arduous because our goals are even grander. But with a clear mission, dedicated hearts, and the pioneering spirit that has driven us, we're certain that our strength, wisdom, and energy will enable us to write a new chapter in the records of China's educational undertaking. Powerful stuff. Remember that I shared that the company was worth $30 billion a year ago? Today that value is under $2 billion. Remember I told you the share price was 161 bucks and you always should invested when they were 60 cents? The shares are at $20 now. Revenues have plummeted 80% and 60,000 employees have lost their jobs. Why? In 2021, Xi Jinping, the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, began a regulatory crackdown on the for-profit education industry, essentially cancelling the entire industry overnight. It would have been so easy for Ming Hong to just cash in his remaining chips and just quit, perhaps retiring to Sanya in Hainan province, which is a sun-kissed island off the south coast of China, very popular with retired government officials and other wealthy Chinese. This was once a booming industry, and most companies in that space just folded, and he didn't want to do that. He tried to pivot to sectors unaffected by the regulations, including dancing and drawing classes, and in December ventured into selling agricultural products online via live streaming, like online QVC, with Min Hong himself, well known in China for his entrepreneurial undertakings, occasionally hosting the sessions. Unfortunately, the company's sales were very poor. However, until just a couple of weeks ago, when its hosts, who were former New Oriental teachers, started using the sessions to teach English to viewers as well. In one video that went viral on Chinese social media, the New Oriental host, after promoting a set deal for steak, pulls out a small whiteboard where he wrote words including steak and seasoning in English, explaining how to use them in sentences before encouraging viewers to buy the meat. Sales from the live streaming platform had been stuck at around 150,000 US dollars a day and just leapt beyond the 2.2 million mark that day, according to data from live streaming tracking platform Huitun. And the share price for Keynote technology, which operates New Oriental's live stream e-com business through a studio called Dongfang Zhenshuan on Douyin, surged 54% that day. Shares in New Oriental, which owns a majority stake in Keynote, jumped 22.5% on that day and were up 54% following the open on that Friday. However, they are still worth only about a third of their value before the new rules came out. So now Citi analysts have a buy rating on New Oriental, and they said the online broadcasting was a bright spot, and yeah, maybe it will achieve more than 7 billion yuan in annual gross merchandise value if they can maintain this current run rate. China banned tutoring for profit in an attempt to ease pressure on children and parents, but it also led to a wave of school closures and layoffs across the private education sector. Some customers who purchased products from New Oriental after watching the live streams on Friday, they said they were impressed by the company's never say die attitude. I burst into tears when I watched it, said Kong Ling, a tech worker in Hangzhou. I'm watching a warrior who stands up despite being beaten by the iron fist of life, and I wanted to buy to show my support. And there's another way Ming Hong shows up differently as a leader. If you talk to anyone who's spent any time really in Asia working for locally owned companies, it's well known that the leadership are not to be criticized at any time for any reason. However, at the New Oriental all-staff annual party, a rap was conducted in front of thousands of staffers, and Ming Hong himself. This rap blatantly criticized the company, the platform, the user experience, and the employee experience. Two crucial elements of leadership demonstrated here are a sense of humor and a willingness to be criticized. Ming Hong, we'll all agree, is one heck of a protector. He made it his responsibility to help tens of thousands of people pivot, to take on a new vision which included drawing from adjacent skills and experiences or building completely new ones. He then supported and nurtured them as they pivoted to e-commerce from teaching, even as they discovered ingenious ways to integrate their old skills into this new paradigm. But beyond these cases, these stories, these examples we can maybe model or aspire to, leadership is in a bad place. It's truly in a crisis. Too many of our current leaders obsess about outcomes. They aren't focused enough on the environment and are willing to burn people in service of chasing numbers, just like that retailer that we heard about. Outcomes are the last link in the chain of cause and effect. The focus of leadership needs to be at the causal end of that chain. Let me explain a little bit more with some help from Chris from Clarity Space. These are his words. Thank you, Chris. To grow a pumpkin, you need 4 elements: water, earth, air, and heat, and of course a seed. During its development, your attention is not on the pumpkin, it's on the 4 elements that make growth possible. The environment. Just like the pumpkin, you have absolutely no idea how a business enterprise will turn out in terms of its form, size, or impact. These things are not predictable. The only thing you can control are the parameters of its environment. So, when leaders fixate on outcomes like share price and profit or time to fill, they do so to the detriment of the causal factors that will determine the quality of those outcomes. If you prioritize the environment, you must ensure that you create certainty for people, like Angela did for me. By continually delivering objective feedback, conversationally if possible, and prioritizing the giving of feedback over other work, skipping or deferring sessions like this will hurt your growth of the pumpkin and are akin to forgetting to water or feed your plants. If you intend to prioritize the environment, you also need to be patient and tolerant. You have to wait for the pumpkin to ripen for its richest color and flavor to shine. If you're going to prioritize the environment, you need to ensure your pumpkin is protected. Here where I live in upstate New York, there's clear and present danger to all vegetables in the form of voles, squirrels, and even more terrifying chipmunks, all of which enjoy the taste of sweet pumpkin and are a threat. As a leader, just like Diana, your responsibility is to charge your responsibility is to charge into danger to protect your people. So, that's what they expect of you, actually. Protection, not to be treated as disposable capital. Ming Hung had a completely different challenge. His pumpkin was made illegal by the government. It was crushed. And just when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, his followers made a quick pivot to pie. Instead of selling pumpkins, he and his followers sold frosted pumpkin spice Pop-Tarts and steak to an eager audience who admired their tenacity. With so much economic and political volatility in this moment, will we choose to acquiesce, to succumb? Or will we, like Ming Hung, protect our people? Will we turn and flee in the face of fear? Or will we learn to fly in new ways? Now it's possible that you'll never have to do anything as dramatic as carving a stone out of a mountain of despair. I hope you don't have to do that. But you might need to find a philosophy, a mantra for yourself, just like he did, and for your people as we face, honestly, imminent danger ahead of us. However that we decide to show up in these days ahead, let's show up as humans, show up with gratitude, show up with patience and tolerance, and show up ready to pivot to pie. Thanks.
Show up ready to pivot to pie. I love it. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, exactly. I think we're all the moment too. I'm like, all right. Yeah. Yeah. The inspirational leaders who show up for the humanity and knowing what we're doing is we're doing it together with people. So how are we showing up and taking that into importance? And the whole aspect of human capital, it's been problematic from the day one. So yeah, people are not capital, or not resources. Excellent. Thank you. Kim.
I'm still silent. What an inspiration. And such a different way to look at it in a bigger picture. I think every leader, if it is in recruitment or not, should have a little bit of you, but also a little bit of all your examples you mentioned. It's mind-blowing.
It's very hard to draw from personal experience. And I was really struggling because these people have given me so much. And I think the other thing that we all know as well, there are many leaders who are very forgettable. But we don't even remember their names. We just know that they're gone, and we're glad. So it's so unfortunately they are the majority, and those leaders that we come across who are able to nurture and grow us are, we never forget. You never forget the best boss you ever had.
Yeah, absolutely. The one who took a chance.
So I'm thankful.
And the best bosses or leaders you had made an impact on your life, which you still
beyond the work.
Which you will use till the end of day.
Yeah, I like to say, tell me your paradigms, and I'll show you your leadership style.
Yeah.
But that was hard. I thought I was going to start snorting because I snort. Like if I cry, that would have been really a bad look. So I think I just managed to hold it down.
It's what is the title of your talk? How leaders can lead with humanity.
I guess it's appropriate, right?
It is very appropriate. Exactly. Wonderful.
Well, on a good note, Michael, Elizabeth snores when she laughs her ass off.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm known as the snorter in the family. So, Michael, welcome to the crew.
Okay, I feel accepted. I'm included. I'm seen.
I'm seen.
Seen. I don't want to be heard though. Just seen.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would just be seen. That'd be sufficient. Yeah.
I love it. This is so Matthias, thank you for all that you've done today. You shared the reminding him of Simon Sinek. So ones that come through the door and say your numbers have been down 2 quarters in a row, what's wrong? Are you okay? Yeah, exactly. That's not what it is. But this is exactly to your point. The forgettable leaders that forget there's a human behind that. Yeah, thanks, Matthias. Well, incredible. And thank you, Michael, for closing us out in terms of the talks. Huge hearts all over the emojis. We're going to be closing this session. We're going to be then going into our closing session where we're going to wrap up some of the incredible learnings for today, as well as continue on those connections to that point of these are people who stay with you throughout your life. Same thing with your peers. So with that, thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.